All right, seems we're live. So hello everyone, and welcome to expert session number 95. Today with Prakash Gurumoorthy. But before I start, I always start with the sponsor recognition. Vtex, the commerce platform powering global retail experiences, and AirMeet, the platform enabling our global virtual and hybrid events. So just a short context about Evolve. Evolve is a private commerce club that connects board level talent, senior advisors, and fractional leaders with growth stage and scaling companies in commerce. So the community exists to create alignment between experience and execution, not networking, as we're trying to also build. We see a white space here. We see that the world isn't getting any younger, and we believe that there's a lot of there are many opportunities for senior talent and for a global community like ours to position itself in the world and connect all this amazing talent with growth companies in commerce. So if you're interested, you can hit me on LinkedIn or Gustavo. We are there to talk about Evolve. Now, a short bio about our expert of this week. Prakash Gurumoorthy is general manager of Vtex, APAC and EMEA, responsible for leading one of the world's largest commerce platforms across highly diverse and fast evolving markets. Before joining Vtex, Prakash built, led and scaled agency businesses and was part of the leadership journey through acquisition, giving him firsthand exposure to how agency value is created, challenged, and redefined as platforms mature. This combination of agency side experience and platform leadership gives him a rare structural view on where leverage actually sits in today's commerce ecosystem across Europe, APAC, and global markets. My co-hosts, Vinny O'Brien, Evolve Commerce member, over 20 years of experience, e-com strategist, also Rethink Retail award-winning e-com expert, and a host or producer of the Rick Watson podcast, and Jean Mies, Evolve Commerce Club member, former president of ADN. They're going to be supporting me in this conversation today. Prakash, to start our chat, I always start with a controversial question. The controversial question for you is, commerce has become more platform-driven, more automated, and more interconnected. In that environment, have agencies lost structural leverage, or are they simply being forced to redefine where their power comes from?
Amazing. Thank you, Carlos. And first and foremost, good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, depending on the time zone. This is a question that kept me thinking, right? Because it's a little bit of a polemic question. But I wanted to kind of take a step back and give a little bit of evolution in terms of how platforms and agencies were looking at things. Currently, if you look at it, the way I see it is platforms have transformed the distribution and infrastructure to a commodity level. At a point in time when we started our digital agency in 2011, 2012, platforms were not at that league. But today, if you look at it, platforms really have commoditized distribution and infrastructure. They have become the new, I call it as they have become the new utilities, right? Like, so you call it as a utility model. But that doesn't mean that platform can undermine the role of an agency. They have just raised the barrier of entry for an agency. What they have done is they have kind of like elevated the expectation of an agency, right? So we can use terms like the brands or customers are looking at agencies to be a trusted advisor or to be a trusted partner. They no longer want the agencies to be a sort of a commodity player, because the game has changed now. One of the things, when you look at the pipeline, right, like you look at brand, you look at agency, you look at platform, and you look at consumer, it's a linear pipeline, right? Brand, agency, platform, consumer. That linearity is completely collapsed. So because the linearity has collapsed, what happens is platform controls the data standards or controls the automation. agency controls the orchestration. Any agency that's going to win today is an agency that controls the orchestration and the intelligence. Because if an agency does not handle the orchestration, brands will never go to an agency. Brands will always kind of go with a platform. And then brands look at keeping the product monopoly through the first party data or the brand IP. Because if they don't give control, or if they own the first party data, brands can own the control and they kind of can go into the hybrid model. So this is how I see, for a long time back. I mean, John and Vinny and Carlos, right, the linear model was quite evident, but today the linear model is become more like, I call it as composable independence. Right. So and what do you mean by composable independence? Composable independence means, the agency will become the orchestrator or the intelligent navigator. Platforms will do the uh, data standards and the algorithms, and brands will control the first party data. That is how I see it. And I can go on and on, but I wanted to kind of keep it crisp because I think it's a very, very interesting question.
Yeah, thanks. And I would actually ask both Vinny and my happy listener. Vinny always has some interesting sub headlines or however we call them, and Jen to follow up on the questions, because I think just on this very very topic that we are covering, I mean, we can have many angles. So Vinny, just start there, and then Sean.
Yeah, thanks for that, Prakash. The commoditization is not something we can roll back on. So I think we've got to adapt to that world. As I think about it, and as you're seeing it now at that macro level from a Vtex perspective, who's designing the roadmap? Because I think ultimately that's where this power struggle begins. Is it on the brand side or is it on the agency side? Because increasingly I'm seeing that the agencies who understand how the platforms are evolving are the ones who are providing a better vision on behalf of their customer or their client base. But I'd be interested just to see where you see that those visions are coming from.
Very good point. I think, like, and that is where I was trying to say that the platforms and the brands have elevated the agencies to a level where they need to be a trusted advisor to the brand. So rather than just being a sort of a efficiency game for the agency, or rather than being like the implementation partner, the agencies are undergoing a transition where they are co-creating this roadmap with the brand to kind of like make sure that this orchestration happens. Because what is happening today for brands is, it's not about the best AI agent that they can select, because there is a lot of clutter on many technologies. There's a lot of clutter on a lot of system of engagements. There's a lot of clutter on system of record. So the brands have to rely on agencies, but agencies who can actually orchestrate all of these and ensure that every party comes to the table with a very clear unification model. And that's why I kind of came back to the composable independence model, because the agency has to be neutral. The agency cannot say, okay, you need to go with this particular platform, or you need to go with this. So the neutrality comes in to help the agency. At the same time, the agency needs to kind of orchestrate all of these for the brand. So it's a co-creation between the brand and the agency. And at Vtex level, Vinny, that's what we see a lot of times. I mean, like, we are now working with one of the largest English Premier League club in Europe, and we see the same thing happening, right? The agency, the platform Vtex, and the brand, all three of them are working in unison. But we also see that the agency and the brand own this roadmap.
Yeah, it's It's an interesting position, and part of it, I think, is how the market has been defined up to this point, which has been on the retailer or the brand side saying we have mid-market and enterprise, and we've kind of leaned to enterprise, but there's more complexity probably in mid-market and less experience. So I think that's going to be an interesting place to see how agencies support that. And kind of a point of clarity, because you've very clearly distinguished between an agency and an SI in this instance. And it's something I always think about, is the language of e-commerce has become so poor and so ill-defined. How do you draw that line between what is an SI and what is an agency, and what should their role be if you are on the brand side?
Excellent point. And it's, you know it very well, Benny. It's evolving, but I would keep it very simple. The SI's KPI, if you look at it, it's very focused on efficiency and also very focused on a particular point of time competency. So if you take a brand, they look at an SI for implementing a CRM or implementing a commerce platform or implementing a marketing cloud or sales cloud or service cloud or what have you. It's, for me, the KPI is more efficiency. You elevate the SI to an agency, it becomes much more holistic, because it's not just efficiency, it's efficiency plus differentiation. Because the agency looks at the brand experience, the agency looks at the interface experience, the channel experience, the agency looks at the book of record experience, the agency looks at how brands can drive their conversion, how brands can look at retail media ads. So it's more unified, and that is where agencies create the differentiation, agencies elevate that differentiation, and with the right platform they can actually capture not just the differentiation but efficiency, differentiation plus a little bit more, which is the orchestration model, because it's a lot of things that a brand has invested, and it's becoming very tough for a brand owner to get value and meaning out of the stack.
On that note of orchestration, I think Jean has probably a lot. You guys were talking in the networking room about the conflict. So Jean, maybe you like to follow up, because in the world of payments also there's a whole ecosystem on itself, right? There's orchestration, there's a lot. So yeah.
No, absolutely. And this whole notion of this, let's call it a synergetic relationship between the different parts. And I might be being a bit controversial here, right? But I think it sounds great in theory. Conceptually, it's great, and it should work because, as you said, Prakash, and also Vinny, each one of the players, the platforms, the agencies, even the payment players, we didn't talk about the payment players, but they have they play a different role, but they have the same objective. They want to be top of mind in the relationship with the brand, right? So rather than, although let's imagine I'm a payments company, I have a great relationship with Vtex, and I did over years and years.
You still have.
But in the end, each one of the players in this ecosystem is driving their own business. They have their own agenda. They have their own priorities, and they will only help each other out as long as it's beneficial to their own business, right? I mean, that's a reality. I wouldn't be talking to Vtex if I didn't think it would add to my business, and vice versa, right? And what I feel is that, and this may have changed over time, right? What I feel is that this, this positioning of each player within the ecosystem, is not very clear to each of the players of the ecosystem. Because if it was for me, I would get everybody into a room and define, what are the touch points, where do we have potential conflicts, and where do we need to land to get the most out of the relationship with the brands that we're catering for, right? And I think that this is not being openly discussed yet, right? So I think the question here is there something going on there? Do you think there needs to be put more focus on this moving forward, or is this something that exists only in my head and not in reality?
John, thanks. Good point. That's what I was like trying to correlate what Vinny asked for, right? There is an evolution that's happening. There is a transition that's happening about this whole thing, right? And I'll take some specific examples, right? So let's take a platform. If you take a platform, they are very great at optimizing their ecosystem, right? So I think if you take Vtex, I mean, we have over 200 plus payment gateways. We have partnership with marketing cloud platforms. We have partnership with personalization systems. So like that, every platform have their own ecosystem and they keep optimizing the same. A brand does not build a unified ecosystem. You will agree with me, right? If you take a brand always has a fragmented tool set. So they might use TikTok for something. They might use an e-commerce platform for a storefront. They might use something for retention. They might use something for ERP. They might use something for personalization, this thing. Now, where does the agency role come here, right? The agency role comes here to tell the brand that I want to make this work as one system. What's your architecture, right? Like I want to make it as one system. And that sometimes platform cannot do because the platform does not have access beyond the system of engagement, right? Like, so for a brand, and when we were doing a lot of digital transformations way back in 2014, 2015, I had a very simple blueprint, which is there is a system of engagement, there's a system of record, and in the middle, there is the channel piece. For a mid-market brand, we are easily talking about like 30 to 40 systems. And this is a huge value add for an agency. And to my point to Vinny, for a SI, it's an evolution, but I think for an agency, it's a expectation by the brand. The brand expects the agency to orchestrate. The brands look at agencies to unify this and give them the value. And I think like now with AI, we are also talking one level higher, right? Because if you look at agency, one tower of the agency is media buying. But as a brand, I'm not looking at an agency to do media buying. I'm saying like you do a agentic orchestration because Meta has come up with a programmatic media buying tool. Google has come up with a programmatic media buying tool. So your ability to handle that as a single orchestrator beyond what I'm expecting is something that's the expectation. Now, your point is valid. Is it happening in real? Is it like too theoretical? But I think usually expectations drive the drive the supply, right? Like, this is what I expect as a brand. Now, you as an agency need to drive that model, right? Because I'm not just looking at efficiency today. I'm looking at like unifying the whole stack and making it more like independent. I don't want to be dependent on the platform. I don't want to be dependent on the agency. And that is why I use the term called composable independence, right? For the agent, for the brand. I want to be composable because I want to have a stack where I can have better control. And then I also need to kind of do that. And there are many examples that we are seeing now with Vtex, where it is going in that direction. I'll give you one very interesting example. Now, if you look at several of the new Vtex customers in Europe, we are seeing a different trend where brands are co-creating this in a 60-40 model. When I mean 60-40 model, 60% of the heavy lifting they're investing in doing that unification that I'm trying to say. Like they want to do that. That doesn't mean they're doing the engineering work, but they are actually doing the strategic work. 40% they are giving it to SI or they're giving it to agency, and at some point they will try to kind of make that their primary mode. But we are seeing that in several enterprise customers that we have recently won, where they are very clear about this ownership. They want to actually own this co-creation.
The point you make, John, is interesting because friction has almost been avoided completely in those partnership models, and it's to the detriment of the industry. And I've tried to become more positively disposed to what's in front of us, and I'm kind of trying to make these points with that in mind, as opposed to maybe taking another route, which I think I could. A few controversial points, not for the sake of being controversial, but agencies may have had it too good for too long. Like there's been this almost free money machine that's been in front of them, and that has been easy. I think the brands that are going to get it right are the ones who do execution really, really well, because the platforms are now so powerful and so more advanced in roadmap planning because they're developing their own AI capabilities, Vtex included there, that the execution layer becomes absolutely paramount. And execution means your ability to do that, or your ability to instruct an agency or an SI to do that work for you. I think the really, really brilliant brands will be the ones who bring some of this expertise in-house, design the strategy, deliver it, and then outsource those pieces that become new, which there's so much newness out there. It means that agencies are going to have to evolve. So I think the part in all of this, as I look forward, is we need a growth engine, Prakash, and I've kind of picked up that's what you're saying. We've had efficiency for so long. Now we need growth, whatever way that manifests for ourselves. But I think it's the agency and the SI landscape that will have to go through the single biggest change of all of this, because you look at the layers that have now been put in front of us, the amount of protocols that are being put in place, whether it's payments or whether it's whatever protocol you want to put out there. This has been mapped out for years, and now the platforms have executed at scale, and partnerships are the way that they're moving this forward. And I think brands who don't recognize that are the ones who get it wrong. So if I fast forward a couple of years, Prakash, kind of from a Vtex perspective, and you've landed some big work in Ireland actually with our largest grocery retailer, which I'm sure you're well aware of. But what does that relationship look like? How do development cycles change? How do we bring a cultural change to support this new acceleration, which will kill some brands completely, or it will accelerate ones to absolutely new levels? Sorry, that's not even a long question. It's just a long statement, I think.
Yes, it's something that we keep advocating to brands, right? So one of the things that we keep telling to brands is, hey, if you are going to take more than 6 months or even 4 months to build like a e-commerce platform, then you're kind of like, there's something wrong in the whole chain of business. And that this alludes to your point, Vinny, which is agencies had it too easy for long, because the development cycles of like 12 months, 14 months, like 18 months of building something and then enhancing it, like are getting to fall down, right? So when we worked with this Irish grocery, the writing was on the wall. It was very clear by the grocery brand that we need to get it up and running within 6 months, and we need like the platform to actually drive a lot of acceleration, and we just need this is exactly to your point. They said we just need this SI/agency just to follow the orders, just execute, right? Like we just want you to kind of do this. In phase 2, what is happening is exactly what we are alluding to now in the last 10 minutes, which is they are taking a 60% heavy lifting on the strategy, which is like how do I enhance the product, how do I build the marketing engine, how do I, because the foundation architecture is already done, the system of engagement is done, the system of record is clear, they are getting sales, they are getting good orders, reliability is there. So now let me just get on to the aspects of differentiation. So this is where I say that either a SI agency have to offer this differentiation to John's point. But if they don't offer, they will just kind of like do it in house. The 60 could turn to 70%, and then like your wallet share from an execution implementation perspective is going to come down, and it's increasing as we see it, right? Like and the same grocery brand is also looking at newer platforms. So when I say newer platforms for execution, right? So how can I develop certain things faster, or how can I not develop this and get into a platform more? So this whole thing, ideally, John, that was my original point, ideally can be done by the agency. It's not that the agency does not have the capability to do it. And that's my take. My take is, I think today it has really evolved from a billing model where I just have like 20 people, I need to build those 20 people for value added work, to like, how do I become a sort of a trusted advisor to even cannibalize my revenue, but I just need to kind of like work on it. So a simple example I've seen with an agency who's working with Vtex is they actually kind of proposed a AI agent for demand forecasting, but the demand forecasting was actually done by 5 people uh, who are their people. But the fact that they could elevate the value chain and remove the billing for the 5 people and get an AI agent to do that, or a third party partner, is where I think the stickiness comes in for that particular ecosystem, right? And we are actively supporting that model with the brands.
Uh, so Prakash, do you view? I think there are a couple angles here. First off, in terms of trends, I'm not sure if this is a new trend, but for example, we've been seeing major advertising agencies now acquiring commerce agencies. I think WPP acquired quite a few of them. So maybe we could say that is a reality. So more mergers in that sense are gonna continue to accelerate. And then the role of the agency, you mentioned also some other revenue streams that an agency can carve. So, for example, streams coming from revenue streams coming from advertisement, or and agencies having to be more efficient on top of all of it, right? So you're not going to be necessarily hiring more people, but you're going to be using the systems that we have in place to, or the AI systems, to be more efficient. So you can squeeze out the margins that are very small nowadays. So I think the question is more like perhaps on the trends that you see and the revenue streams, and maybe you both could comment. And Jean, maybe you have also some. I think in the world of payments wouldn't change so much. Maybe like companies becoming banks and banks acquiring. So yeah, would love to have your take. So starting with Prakash.
Yeah, I think there are like new revenue streams that are getting added for agencies. I think Vinny alluded that also. I wanted to structure that in like 3-4 aspects, right? So the first aspect is lights on, which is the agency or the SI have to do what they are doing on the foundational stack or the current stack in a good way, and keep doing in a better way, because everybody knows that if you are working on a current stack, you can reduce the development cost by a bare minimum of 30 to 40% minimum, right, at the minimum. So let's say if you are like if you're making like $2 million out of a particular brand, like you should be able to show like 20 to 30% cost takeouts every year through a better efficient model. So that's number one for agency or SI, which is looking at efficiency, right? The second part is there is a model on audit of the platform, because today, if you look at it, there is a huge vacuum on audit. And what I mean by audit is every platform gives to a brand a platform reported metrics. Like, for example, if you take the accelerators like Google or Meta, like Google Meta will say that, okay, the ad made X amount of dollars, but my account made only Y amount of dollars, where Y is significantly lesser than X. This was told to me by a brand, right? So the problem is, at scale, it becomes like an algorithmic puzzle, right? Like I get like so many things that are coming, and I need to audit or I need to verify that, and it becomes very tough, right? And that is a huge aspect from a marketing perspective, because you need to able to audit, you need to verify, you need to look at the efficiency, because uh, there is a huge issue with the metrics that are being reported and a huge issue with the attribution. So that's a that's a very good revenue model in the AI world, that they can automate and actually create agents that can actually do that. The the other thing that I see is on the creative side, right? There's a lot of dollars that the brand expend on content and creative UI UX. And today there's a lot of tools that have come in globally, that says I can automate product catalog images, I can automate your PDP images, I can automate videos, I can do this, I can do that. But what is the moat here, right? Like, I mean, if I'm running, like if I'm Ferragamo, or if I'm like a luxury brand, or if I'm a ASOS, I mean, I need to understand what is the real um, value proposition that you're offering to me. And that is where agencies can really play a very good role, because they can say, I have evaluated 5 tools, I've evaluated 6 video generation tools, and I know your landscape quite well, and I can actually shift your creative supply chain to like a system engineering model of creative back office. So I can actually give you ABCD tool sets, and it can cut like 40% of your content production, content creation, content transformation costs. I can change your creative costs and things like that. So this becomes a very interesting shift, right? Like for the agents. So there are many things that can be done with the new age disruptions that are happening. And I didn't touch upon the elephant on the room, which is data, right? Like if you take Europe, we look at compliance, we look at data sovereignty, we look at all these things. And this is a very important part for an agency or SI, because at the end of the day, we look at how we protect the data, right? And how a brand can like protect the first party data. That's like my high level point of view.
Perfect. John, perhaps some comments coming from the world of payments on these consolidations and movements, and yeah, just maybe if you have remarks there.
I have to say, I was a very interested listener right now. I was learning a lot from Prakash here. Very interesting, Prakash.
Fair enough. Vinny, you're on mute.
Sorry, I was on mute. Yeah, I'm probably not as hopeful on the agency side, Prakash. I think that value will be left for a smaller few. The point about consolidation of the market, I think, is inevitable. I think maybe the way I think about the agency model itself. So we probably move from something that is monthly recurring revenue to more project-based revenue. And from that perspective, you've got to hire differently. So I see changes like, I spoke with an agency yesterday. They work with stay-at-home moms predominantly, because they've got blocks of time where they do certain tasks and the tasks get completed and they pay them for the hours done, which forms part of a project roll-up, and they kind of charge on that basis. but the way that the agencies are monetized becomes really differently, and also then the way that they're costed, because you could have an agency turning over $4 to $5 million in revenue and fees, a small agency, but about 70% of that's going to be going on payroll right now. So the ability for them to start monetizing their staff differently, I think, needs to be recognized. The consolidation of the market includes tools and tool sets. The platforms, as I mentioned earlier, are so well equipped right now, Prakash. And it's telling even that you've gone from agency side to platform side, which tells me where you see the market in the future as well. That's not lost on me that you sit where you do. I I think there's one area. Well, there's a few areas of commerce we haven't solved, and if I was an agency right now, I'd be trying to get my head around international commerce. Two things about it. One, you've got to change your supply chain if you want to do it properly, because product ubiquity means that we've got the same product available in every country. The only difference is price and shipping. You need to get back to a world where you cannot get the same product in every single country, regardless of what it is. I think that product differentiation is how we change the supply chain and the way we consume products. The second part of that is now we have an ability to make margin. You've described a really interesting world, Prakash, where the conversation is now not necessarily about margin erosion. It's now that we're giving you margin back because you're working with a platform that's providing you all these tools. It's down to you to make them work to grow your business. And without that agency fee in there, actually, you've got a 30% margin swing there on gross margin, which probably leaves you at 10 points net margin. That 10 points is the difference between profitability and non-profitability, which we've suffered for 20 years. All of a sudden, e-commerce from that perspective has room to grow, where we've kind of plateaued it in terms of the e-commerce percentage of overall retail. I think we can start looking to a future in 10 or 15 years where we're growing that percentage, not in every category, but certainly in key categories like grocery and apparel and fashion. That's really where I see, if I was an agency right now trying to get my head around something, it would be getting international commerce really, really right. And a discipline that agencies have not done, you've mentioned it a few times, Prakash, is understand supply chain and how it operates from start to finish, and really get your head around where you fit in that chain, because supply chain now means sourcing product data at the point of production. So you're not going to be able to make too much money for too long trying to solve that problem. And so there's all these dynamics that are in play right now. So for me, I see it's a slight variation on what you said, but that's my view from the southwest of Ireland, and it doesn't really count for too much.
It does count a lot. You also have your feet in the US, and so
No, Vinny, no, Vinny, fair point. And I think like there is definitely traces of these elements coming through, and I think like it's interesting to hear this perspective, because one of the things that, like what John said, right, I always want to learn from brands and also from top agencies to see how they are like repivoting. But having run like the agency before, I think the verdict is clear. What you say is correct. The map is dead, but that doesn't mean that agency is going to not get any money. I think the definitely the map is dead. That I understand, because the platform runs the market, right? Like and like the brand makes the product or the service. The agency for a long time held the expertise, and the platform was just doing the plumbing. But today that whole the whole value chain is dead, right? Like, so the platforms have democratized the whole execution, and that is why I started by saying that, like, today platforms are like utilities. So then, like, the point is, anybody can launch a store without like with just a credit card, right? Or anybody can do anything with just a credit card. But then where is the differentiation mode for the agency, or where is the differentiation mode for SIs, or where is the differentiation mode for brand? And then that is why I wanted to kind of I learn from brands that brands want to keep the data, the customer data or the first party data, because that I think becomes their whole moat, because a lot of it are like given to other third parties, and agencies want to kind of like orchestrate and unify and create this model. So it's a little bit of transition that's going on. And I'm also seeing one very important trend: agencies and SIs who have been relying on a single platform model, I think they are actually dead, right? Because that's not going to work out, right? Like, because all brands look at neutrality, all brands look at, hey, how do I kind of get new trends and things like that, right? So this kind of like something that we are seeing. But yeah, I mean, it's an interesting evolution that we are seeing.
Sure.
Thanks. I think we have Adrian. Adrian, would you like to ask your question, Adrian? So 40 minutes now. We start inviting the community. So welcome,
Well,
Adrian.
thank you for letting me or giving me the chance to say something here. Well, I've carefully listening in. I believe, based on what I just heard from you, we fit mostly or more into the SI category rather than the agency. And this is something I've been struggling with from the beginning, because from the very beginning, when we started implementing e-commerce projects, the brands, as you name them, they were always expecting us to come up with the strategy or supply this or fill this gap in their activity. They didn't know how to do e-commerce, so they come back to us to say, how do I do that? What is new on your area? What can you tell me from another customer? Which I think it's not what we were used to delivering. The value that we've added was a very good knowledge of the technology and the platform that we were using for creating the solution, but we were expecting them to know what they need so we could supply them what they need in order to succeed. And I've seen that very often the good relationships we had were with brands who knew what they needed. So they came to us with a need, and we found the most efficient way to handle that in, I don't know, considering the performance of the result, the maintainability, the cost, the long-term flexibility of that. And I believe that one of the challenges nowadays, if agencies turn more into an SI than an agency, because brands are now evolving and they want to get in control of their strategy and how they implement stuff, what channels they are using, and the content they are using. So this is not as much the job of the agency, but rather the agency needs to orchestrate, as you mentioned, all these needs they have, and put them on in a consistent system and complete system. Then the challenge is getting to know all the tools which are available, because right now every single day you have 10 more tools with the potential of being something that could simplify your work or your customers work, or providing better content, or I don't know, providing better analytics on the results. And I believe that for me, as an SI, if you want to put it like that, it becomes increasingly difficult to keep up with all these. I think that you're totally right. There's no such thing as a one platform does all. You cannot just rely on one thing that does everything, because there's too much noise there, and you cannot possibly integrate everything in your platform in a timely manner. As you mentioned, 6 months of implementation is already long. After 6 months, whatever you thought at the beginning of the implementation, it's almost obsolete, if not completely obsolete, because something happened in the meantime. There's a new agent, there's a new flow, there's a new trend. You have to the new browser, it's totally different new technology in the browser available. So everything that you implement after 6 months, it's more or less obsolete. But then how should me as an, let's say, agency SI handle this or navigate this complexity of platforms and tools and everything that goes into place? Because your customers would always expect. I've seen something on the, I don't know, on LinkedIn, somebody talking about a new tool which does whatever thing a lot more efficient than before, and usually in most cases that's just a sales talk. You cannot actually figure out if that thing actually delivers, or if it delivers for you, unless you start poking around with it. And if you have to evaluate these tools for a customer, you have to spend weeks maybe trying out and then testing out different tools for different purposes, and then come up with, okay, I think this is the right solution for your use case. And this comes back to what I said earlier. If I spend 3 weeks investigating some tools, in 3 weeks there's another 10 or 20 tools available which probably can do it better than what I've tested. So
thanks, Adrian. Yeah, go ahead, Prakash.
No, it's a very relevant point, Adrian. I'll just say from my perspective, and I can be completely off track or controversial. I think it all starts with two things, which is org design and accountability. Agencies or SIs, however you label it, you need to embrace a different org design and different accountability. That's very critical, right? Like, so for example, like I've seen some agencies who have killed the role called head of media, and they have made that head of media role as head of automation and integration. They have created a new role called head of tools, partnerships and alliances. Now, what does this role do? The role is exactly what you said, Adrian, because there are like 200 tools that are coming in a month, and your ability to kind of evaluate, access the tool is the accountable person. It needs to be one person or maybe two people, right? Like, you know, an architect and one like sort of a business person. So if you're able to run that, like, then you know, okay, for product catalog, I have evaluated 4 tools and sorry, I've evaluated 10, and these 2 are relevant for my customer, and this is like the pricing, and I think I can do a pilot for, like, let's say I just as a, I don't want to take my example, I think, like, but I would like to thank Vtex, because Vtex has created this model where Santiago, our CRO, has created this, and Mariano have created this Friday focus. So we have this Friday focus the first half of the day, where we need to create AI agent irrespective of the role. So I have personally, in the last 6 months, I have, even though my role is like a leadership role, I have created 6 AI agents that can help improve my productivity. And I also fail, because I failed in creating these. So I know how difficult or easy is it to create an AI agent, and I know how these LinkedIn posts are like, so, like, you know, different. So the ability to be hands-on on this, the ability to experiment on this, and the ability to focus on this becomes a differentiating factor for a SI or an agency, because there are so many things. And I can tell you, like, last week in my Friday focus, I found an AI company that does EDI integration seamlessly using an AI agent. It's a very important product for my customers and for me. So I had a chat with them, and like, I found the pricing, and then I asked my partnership team to look at it and like take it. So this type of, like, how do you say, drive has to be there within the company. For a platform company, honestly, I can leave that responsibility with the brand or the SI. But then for us, we are looking at the ecosystem, and we need to look at how do we ensure that we derive the right value. So Adrian, I would say only 2 things in a very simplistic way. You have to change the org design, like the roles. You have to kill some roles or change the KPIs of some roles, and you need to kind of create this tools, partners, and alliances role, which kind of evaluates new things that are coming on a regular basis. And the KPI is very simple. In your customer base, how can they bring these tools?
Thank you. That's very useful. Thank you.
Thanks. So next one is Hendrik. Hendrik, as always, my friend.
So I'm going to join my friend John. I'm going to friend my friend John today, and I'm going to also be controversial. I believe we have the end of state dinners. I think if I was a system integrator or an agency, I would be very worried about the future. The future for me was very clearly shown last week when that Canadian company that Prakash competes against, the company that starts with an S and ends with a Y, when they essentially kill their partnership business. I have a saying that I tell my clients is that an agency you start dying the day that you become an agency, and you start looking for an acquisition so that you can sell your book of business, because otherwise there's no business for you to survive to. It's just the law of nature for me. So I'll get that out of my chest. Secondly, I will join my friend Vinny in saying that I think Prakash has basically given us, for me, and I say this with all due respect, a very rosy and sunny picture. I have a very different point of view for regards to North America. And I think if I was an agency, I would be looking in essentially doing what Prakash does on a Friday. You have to have somebody on your business that looks at new tools, that basically is your, I wouldn't say head of innovation, because I hate that title, but it's somebody that's core job is to look at everything that's being developed and how you can find it. I believe, as I sit here today, the world is moving towards APIs, having people that understand APIs, that can build agents by themselves. So when Prakash talks about Focus Fridays, yes, please, more of that. But I see platforms, everybody in the ecosystem, not just the Canadian company. There's a Seattle-based company, a very small company that does essentially the most of the marketplaces in the world. They are trying to move away from agencies for marketing, because, folks, let me be bluntly clear here. This is all about margins and cash and revenue. If they don't need you, they don't need you. I hate being blunt, but at the end of the day, it's a fight for survival. And I fear for my friends who work at SIs. I fear for my friends at agencies, because automation is basically being seen as, we need to be more efficient. So we will continue to see all the acquisitions being done by, publicists and whoever else, because that's what they have to do to survive. But if you are like our friend Adrian, who offers questions, him and Kartik, to essentially figure out and stay alive, you should be thinking about your own survival, and you should be worried about what's next, because the platforms are leaning into technology. We've seen it again this week. Amazon is letting 16,000 people go. They can tell all of us at Davos and everywhere else, AI is not killing us. Come on, just stop lying. It's not the case. There, I said it. Vinny, I used the word, the blank word that I'm not supposed to use. I mentioned it's AI, but I just think we've got to be realistic here. But we also have to understand that everything boils down to, where can we as the business get the most money? The platforms are the best positioned. They can tell us all what they want, but they are in the best position because they can make partnerships with startups, to brands, to everybody, and ensure that they survive. Thank you, folks. I must probably have given you all heart palpitations, but I just think I think it's time we deal with the facts, because I'm what I heard for the last 40 minutes and what I've seen in the last 6 months. I'm sorry, folks. It's just not. I'm not seeing and hearing the reality. There I go. I'm going to mute myself, because otherwise I'll talk your ear off.
So no remarks. You just wanted to drop that one, was it? No
it's
question.
Called a mic drop. It's called a mic drop, Carlos.
Yes. Thanks, Hendrik.
Yep. Good mic drop.
Well, since there was no question, maybe Kartik, would you have a question there?
Yeah, so I think my question was primarily to the panel, because obviously I have some 2 cents to add, because obviously coming from an agency background myself and now having started out on my own consulting journey, I currently, what I see as one of the big challenges which again exists, and this is when I started my consulting journey last 2 years. I've been working at the intersection of where I see today where agencies themselves are not really able to add value. Okay, I'll tell you where this is. What is unfortunately happening, and having done and led platform businesses myself, being part of a platform business, I've used to work at Flipkart, which is right now with Walmart here in India. It was a large marketplace here in India, and obviously worked in a SaaS entity where I was actually building solutions for a lot of small and medium-sized resellers to actually go and start selling on marketplaces like Flipkart, Amazon, and various other players here. I've seen two things happening right now. See, on one side, if you look at the problem that exists with a lot of platforms, is everything kind of comes from the lens of a product. Okay, where I think today the challenge is actually in the integration. Okay, across variety of levers of businesses which are there within the organization. So today, if you actually ask me, if the easiest part is actually to kind of basically be able to get out an RFP and then basically be able to drive the solutioning, which is one part of it, which majorly kind of involves mostly the tech and probably a few people who are part of the core project team driving the whole execution. The whole problem starts post that. Because after that, if you actually ask me, it is primarily the heavy lifting that has to be managed internally. And honestly, organizations themselves are not geared to basically be able to drive an execution on their own. Agencies, again, because they are obviously not completely involved into the day-to-day activities of the organization, find themselves hard pressed to basically be able to add anything of significant value. And I'm talking about large organizations here. I might be wrong if it probably is for small and medium-sized companies, but at least for large enterprises, this is the primary problem. And where I see there is a clear opportunity today is that there is that internal area of basically driving that whole integration, where I think today there is hardly anyone really doing all that heavy lifting. So as much as we talk about automation, Gen AI, and all of these things coming in, no one is really kind of understanding the real challenges that actually happen in the orchestration layer. Okay, because there is significant amount of heavy lifting that has to happen, because one size fits all does not work in the world of AI. You need to really be able to deal with things which are custom for that particular organization or for that particular center. You can't really lift and shift, or you can't really plug in something and expect things to work from out of the box the second day. And what is unfortunately happening is there are bits and pieces of automation happening, but nothing which is really kind of really driving true value. Because if ultimately growth and real revenue growth or real organic growth is basically what you're really looking at, it can only happen if you are able to kind of really be able to piece things together and drive that entire end-to-end integration, which is where I think today agencies, unfortunately, because they don't understand that bit. Either you are a brand agency, either you are a media agency, either you are a tech agency, but you are not really at the core an agency which really is able to kind of connect the dots and really be able to kind of understand where true value generation really is there for the client. So you're not really unlocking value. As long as you don't unlock value, you really are not really kind of going to drive anything of significance. That's my personal view of having been in the trenches as a consultant, now working with an enterprise, okay, trying to basically be able to enable and help them drive growth. And I figure out that is one big challenge, which is unfortunately something that has not been really understood well, or there is no one or no agency for that matter who is really able to kind of being able to unlock their value today for the people.
Very good. Thank you. Maybe we should do an expert session with you as well on in the near future. That's very interesting. Prakash, perhaps some final remarks. I think it was more like also a statement there that Karthik had, and it's quite interesting one. So we're reaching almost an hour plus the 15 minutes, an hour and 15. So just to be respectful with your time, any final remarks that you like to add, or anything that we didn't touch on this session that we should be asking you that we didn't touch? Perhaps you have some final comments. Really interesting session today. I think a lot of engagement.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think like again, as I say, right?
Can you mute? Can you just yes? Okay, go ahead again. Sorry.
Yeah. No, just to kind of consolidate and crystallize, I think great points of view by Vinny, Hendrik, John, and Karthik. The whole narrative or the whole ecosystem, as we keep talking about it, right? We have not come to a state where a brand or a client or a retailer can do anything out of the box just like that. I want to go to the first principles here, right? If you take a platform, you need to configure, you need to customize, and you need to compromise. There are three parts. You configure, you customize, and you compromise. Even for a configuration, you need like a agency or a SI or a in-house engineering team. And then comes customization. And we know what happens in a mid-market to enterprise. I'm not talking about SMEs, because SMEs, you can use a DIY store and get like $1 million of sales. That's not the market that I'm referring to. I'm referring to like a mid-market enterprise retailer who has 300 stores or 500 stores, like what Vinny referred to, the one in Ireland. And I need to connect their physical stores. I need to do inventory optimization. I need to kind of do assisted sales. I need to empower the salesperson in the store. I can safely say that Vtex does all of it, but I can also say that like it's either the brand who needs to have their own team, or they need to rely on an agency or a SI. So I still say the same first principles, which is no platform, even with the advent of AI, can do everything by itself. You either need to configure, you need to customize, or you need to compromise on the aspects or on the features. So we can say that, okay, it need not be agency, but my point is, if there is an agency, or if there is a SI, or if there is a brand team, their role becomes an orchestrator, their role becomes an unifier, because there is so much of things that are going on, and they need to make sure that they look at the right effectiveness of the stack. Otherwise, it's going to be a huge problem. And this is what we are seeing today, right? I said 60-40. This is the same thing in Europe. Like if you look at Europe, most of our enterprise and mid-market customers, they actually keep the heavy lifting or the strategy, and 40% they give it to SIs or agencies, right? In some cases, it can be 50%. But that still is a significant chunk of business for the agency, because
Meninas, barulho, please. Amazing. I thought I was on mute. My girls here
okay.
were making some noise.
No worries.
Sorry, guys.
I thought you were kind of interjecting something in the response.
It was really good, and I was like, "Oh, sorry."
No.
He was almost swearing in Portuguese.
Yeah,
almost.
exactly.
Yes.
No, but I think you got the final summary, right? You know, that's kind of where I see things going on.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Prakash. If people want to, well, our members can always know more about you. But if people on LinkedIn, if they want to learn more about you and Vtex, or yeah, what's the best way?
Sorry, I lost you.
If people want to know more about you and Vtex, what's the best way to reach out?
Yeah, I'm just like a LinkedIn away, and happy to kind of interact anytime, and you know, I can share my contact details. Happy to kind of talk about the platform. I consciously kind of avoided the sales pitch of Vtex, but I think like at any point in time, if they're interested to know about Vtex, happy to share. And I'm just LinkedIn away.
Amazing. Well, that was it. Another expert session 95. I think this was amazing. So Jean, Vinny, thank you so much. Prakash, once again, thanks very much. And I'll see you all next week. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Perfect.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, folks.